The little girl in my house. When I was younger, I was always told ghosts and spirits weren't real, they were fictional, and to not be scared. As a kid, I obviously believed they weren't real until weird things began happening. Things went missing. I saw odd things that just weren't right in mirrors and windows, and so much more. The first time I saw the little girl was when I was 8. She was sat at the end of my mother's bed just staring at me. I screamed and ran downstairs to go and get my mom who was watching the TV, and when she came upstairs the girl was gone. This is the start of all the things I experienced. It all goes downhill from here. After I saw the girl, the weird things became more frequent and intense. I would wake up with scratches all over my body. More important things would go missing all over the house, and I kept hearing footsteps. It felt like something was watching me and waiting, like I was the prey and they were the predator. The second time I experienced something was when I was 9. I was sleeping, and I woke up to what felt like hands grabbing my ankles. Before I could even act, I was ripped out of my bed. I started crying and screaming, and everyone in my house came running in to see what had happened. The way I was lying, I couldn't have fallen out of bed. I was dragged. This was not the little girl. There was something else at our house. After that stuff started appearing, I saw people in the corner of my room. Every time I woke up, I felt like something had been watching me. The next time I saw the little girl, she was sitting in the bathtub crying. I asked her if she was okay, and she ran off. This was the last time I saw her till 2021, which was my most recent sighting of her. I kept hearing footsteps back in August of 2021 from the attic, so I decided to go up there and have a look. My attic is too high to climb into, and I don't have the strength, so I taped my phone to a thick stick so I could look at the footage once I got down. When I looked at the footage, I saw in the corner of the attic she was standing in the corner. She was only there for a brief moment, and then she was gone from the recording, and that is the last time I saw her. That thing that dragged me out of the bed comes back though. I feel it every now and then pass through my bedroom. It's waiting and watching. I don't know what it wants, but it wants me. My girlfriend's deadly secret. I'm a middle-aged guy working a boring 9-5 job. It's the most boring job in the world, the job of an accountant. I work in a great bank, but it doesn't matter so much to me because it helps me to pay the bills. I've never fit anywhere. I fit into the shy, awkward, nerd category. I may or may not go so far to say that I'm unattractive, but women always love to avoid me like the plague. So imagine my surprise when a very attractive woman took an interest to me in my cousin's wedding. It started out great, and oddly enough that our vibe matched, and even our likes, dislikes, and hobbies. I took one look at her and felt something I haven't felt for years. It was totally love at first sight. I felt she liked me too. As we talked more and more, I became more and more fascinated by her. I also felt a little lightheaded. The edges of my vision started to blur. When I told her that I wasn't feeling so well and wanted to call it a night, she insisted to come with me to my room. I reluctantly agreed as I had trust issues. Also, no woman ever wanted to spend the night with me, so there was that. When we entered the room, my cousin let me stay for the night. I turned on the corridor light. No, please, turn it off, please. I heard her squeal. We did everything in the dark. I distinctly remember the little nibbles almost like tickles that I felt when she was making love to me. It even got weirder when I started to notice these weird round spots that began to appear on my legs. Then they turned into huge and painful pus-filled boils. They slowly started to spread until they left these huge scabby holes on the skin of my legs. My GP diagnosed it as an unusually strong drug-resistant strain of necrotizing fasciitis flesh-eating bacteria. In the meantime, my doctors continued to give me loads of antibiotics, but none worked. The condition of my legs gradually worsened. I wondered where she was. As I lay there on the hospital bed, being fed and medicated through Roman 4, my sedatives kicking in, I saw her casually walk in, H high. I muttered, struggling to stay awake. There was something very different about her face. She smiled at me, displaying sharp and narrow piranha teeth. My eyes widened in shock. She put her mouth close to my ears and whispered, "So sorry about your legs, but I enjoyed my time with you. You smelled so good that I couldn't resist. Your meat was the best thing that I've ever tasted so far. When I bit you, the poison from my teeth got into your skin, but I didn't want this to happen to you. Anyway, I hope you missed me, because I am not done with you yet." Then I heard her chuckle. Suddenly, the light in my room went out, and I felt this tickling sensation all over my face and torso. "You can't get away from this," I whispered. I heard her laugh. "Oh, honey, I've been getting away with it for centuries, even before you were born. No man can resist me," she breathed into my ear, and I knew that I wasn't going to be alive for much longer. I didn't know what she was and where did she come from, but I knew that I will take her deadly secret with me to the grave. Maybe she was the monster created by the sins of men. I knew I wasn't alone. I went to college at a very small tech school, no more than 3,000 students and less than a 1,000 living on campus. Most days were after class were boring, and due to the size, there were zero parties on the weekends. I struggled to fit in and spent most of the time by myself. On one particular Saturday night, I sat aimlessly in my room trying to sleep. On this particular day, the boredom was slowly turning into a lonely, depressed feeling. To pass the time, I would often go on night walks through the campus, and knew this was the only way to help me get to sleep this night. It was right around 2:30 a.m. when I decided to get out of bed, get dressed, and start my walk. The dorms sat at the bottom of a massive hill with the main campus sitting up top. Since it was 2:30 a.m., outside was silent besides the crickets and cicadas. It was peaceful. On top of the hill, past the main building, all the way near the back end of the property, were a few picnic tables that I would usually walk to. Beyond the property line, it was an open field that was never maintained and just grew out naturally with weeds and shrubs. Past that were the woods. Once you hit the woods, there was a dirt trail that was wide enough to drive a car onto. I've walked it many times and have never been able to walk it to the main road, so I'm not entirely sure where it came out to. But there was a section on the road that you could see into the field and the main campus and exactly where the picnic tables are. As I walked through the campus, the walk felt as all my others before. I enjoyed listening to all of the sounds at night. Crickets chirping, the wind whistling through the leaves, the occasional owl if you were lucky. After about 10 minutes I came to the picnic tables and sat upon them, completely alone with my thoughts, listening to my surroundings. But very shortly I noticed that the campus had gone silent. My peaceful mind was slowly starting to be replaced with a sense of anxiety that to this day I still have never had replicated. I was no longer alone. I pulled out my phone to check the time, almost 3 a.m. My anxiety started to grow more and more as I could feel someone starting at me the way a predator stares down its prey. I could feel my heart pounding through my chest as I became more and more uneasy. And then the silence was replaced with the honk of a car horn, and then another and another in only a few seconds. The horn came from behind me past the field, from the dirt road that ran through the woods. A car was parked there watching me. I stood motionless like a deer in the headlights. As the driver continued to honking his horn at me, he gave me a new message as he flashed his headlights sauce. Was this a warning directed to me? Did they see someone ready to pounce on me? Were they the ones in danger? I decided that I wasn't going to stick around any longer to find out. I jumped off the table and ran as fast I could to the safety of my dorm. This would be the last time I walked alone at night on campus. I'm still not 100% who was watching me, but I believe the driver of the car saw something that I couldn't and saved me from a nightmare scenario. Stay still. I was 15 at the time and was trying to sleep since the next day was important to me. It was so hot in my room, so I opened my window trying to cool down my room, and it was working, It was such a nice, soothing breeze, and I fell asleep rather quickly. I woke up around 2-3 a.m. I forgot to close my window. As I sat up, I heard noises coming from outside my window. It sounded like someone was walking around. I was scared. The only thing I could do is stay still. I didn't want to make any sudden movements, since whoever, or whatever, didn't notice someone trying to shut the window. After some time, the walking stopped, and I ran to shut the window and closed my curtains, not sure how. But I fell asleep after turning the TV on for some background noise. Night 2. I knew to shut the window this time before 10 to prevent anything scary from happening. I was getting ready for bed and heard knocking coming from somewhere. I brushed it off since I have a cat and she could just be making knock-like noises. Right? Nope. I entered my room and there it was, the knocking coming from the window, and I had to be brave and I opened the curtain. There he was. A grown-ass man staring back at me. He was covering his face with a surgical mask. I could only see his brown eyes. I freaked out and ran to my mom and woke her up. Mom, there's somebody at my window. What do you mean there's someone at your window? She rushed and got up. She came into my room, opened the curtain. Haha, very funny. What? Mom, there was truly someone there. Go to bed. I don't have the time to deal with this. God, I have to work in the morning. She walked away, and I was standing there confused. Maybe he heard me yelling. This didn't stop, not for a while. I was unable to sleep for most of the nights, worrying he could push open my window. With enough strength, he most likely could since my house is quite old. Since I stayed up for majority of the night, I timed what time the knocking starts, around 2:30, and would stop around 4, sometimes earlier. I wonder why he chooses to waste his night knocking on a window. What does he want from me? He always tries to pry open the window. I get more and more nervous since I can feel like one day I'll forget to lock the window and he might get in. Whenever I go places, I feel like I'm being watched. Probably just my imagination though, or maybe it's him. All of these feelings stopped. He stopped coming to my window. He just disappeared. I was relieved. One night, I heard 3 knocks. My cat wanted to investigate, so she went to the window. She was hissing like crazy, and I woke up and stayed still. I forgot to shut the curtain. God, was I ever stupid. I heard a knife drag down my window, my cat still hissing. She ran up to me and laid on me, and I tried to calm her down. It worked, and eventually the noises stopped. I turned around and went to try to sleep. I lay there staring at the ground. I closed my eyes and heard a whisper in my ear. Night. I'm stuck here. Hello, can anyone hear me? It feels like I've stumbled into a place that time forgot. The clock blinks relentlessly at 4:30 in the morning, but I'm lost in a place that doesn't seem to exist on any map or in any memory. It all started about 12 haunting hours ago when my family and I were together. It was a tranquil evening until an unnerving shift occurred. My mother, amidst our chatter, began delving into unsettling discourse. Her words twisted and turned, unraveling a twisted tale about liminal spaces, the existential fabric of our world, and an obscure realm known as the backrooms. Her speech became a haunting symphony of whispers and fragmented thoughts that gripped us with an otherworldly dread. Amidst her delirious monologue, there was an unsettling familiarity in her tone, as though she spoke from a place of intimate acquaintance with the horrors she described. Her fragmented words carried the weight of someone who had traversed these corridors before, the resonance of a haunting memory etched deep within her consciousness. She spoke of peculiar landmarks, eerily specific details that could only stem from first-hand encounters, a flickering light at the end of a hallway that promised both salvation and doom, the echoes of footsteps that weren't her own haunting her every move, and a chilling sense of déjà vu, as though the walls themselves whispered tales of her previous excursions. Then, as if gripped by an unseen force, she halted abruptly, her gaze fixed on some invisible horror. A dreadful silence consumed the air, a palpable tension suffocating our senses. The world seemed to pause in anticipation. And then she collapsed, a lifeless marionette discarded by an unseen puppeteer, stiff and unmoving, like a bird plummeting from the sky in a hauntingly graceful descent. Driven by desperation and an unwavering determination, I recalled her whispered advice amidst her cryptic ramblings about the enigmatic backrooms. With trembling hands and a racing heart, I attempted to no-clip, as she had suggested before her untimely demise. As I pressed against an indistinct wall, a surreal sensation enveloped me. Reality fractured, bending and distorting around my fingertips until, inexplicably, I passed through. I emerged into a desolate passage, the walls adorned with the same monotonous, sickly hue that defined this nightmarish domain. Each step further into this realm intensified the sense of displacement, as if I existed in a place neither wholly tangible nor entirely surreal. Now, a wanderer trapped between worlds, I navigate these endless corridors, hoping to decipher the cryptic riddle of the backrooms and uncover the elusive exit my mother hinted at in her final moments. But the further I delve, the more I sense an ominous presence lurking just beyond sight, as though the very fabric of this place conspires against my escape. If anyone can hear this plea, please help me find my way back to a world untouched by this harrowing abyss. Necromancy. Necromancy is strictly forbidden. To open the city to that kind of magic, you may as well let the Azrahen kill us themselves. I don't think we have much option, the king said lazily. And how do you fathom we supply this? Here Lotus looked over at Nolly with disgust as the words left his mouth. Warlock with his army of the undead. Here Lotus, you know as well as I the courtyard is filled with the corpses of the fallen. To raise an army of dead soldiers would only further signify their honor for the crown. Are you suggesting digging up the corpses of those laid to rest? Forgive me, sir, but even for a god of war, such as yourself, desecration of those laid to rest is the greatest of all sins. Not to worry, Nolly said with minor annoyance. The corpses need to be fresher. Little use in rotting bones on the battlefield. So what do you suggest? The king asked inquisitively. We'll need fresh corpses, no less than 30,000. 30,000 corpses. And where do you expect us to find that? Herr Lotus asked. My liege, Old Town alone has a population of 60,000. If the Azrahen arrive, that will easily be zero before nightfall. Are you suggesting we kill our own? Not kill as much as sacrifice. Consider it a gift to the king, a sacrifice for the greater good. And how do you expect us to do this? I don't. We just didn't know the Azrahen poisoned the grain until it was too late. Poison our own people. Have you lost your mind? Quite. But that's a story for a later time. Your liege, with due respect, you must see the madness in his words. Hold your tongue. I want to hear him out. Currently, it's the only solution we have. The king extended his swollen hand and said, Please, Nolly. Nolly bowed graciously and continued, My liege, I have an army of imps who jump at the opportunity for mischievous deeds. Given your permission, I can infect the grain from here to Zashilria in a fortnight. Symptoms should show rather quickly, and before they know it, they would be armed and ready to take the Azrahen. This is insanity. Maybe, but better to be insane than dead. And what do you propose of the bodies after the defense? That's entirely up to you. If you wish, we can burn the remains respectfully, laying them to rest, or... The king waited with anticipation, then suddenly burst out. Or what? You can't be seriously entertaining this lunacy. Here, Lotus, if you do not hold your tongue, I'll lock you in your chamber until tears. Here Lotus went silent. Nolly continued. Or we keep them in this undead stasis to be used as your fearless army. The undead do not die, they feel no pain, they are the ultimate soldier. Here Lotus bit his tongue. Scratching his beard, the king thought for a moment. A fortnight. A fortnight? Nolly said with a grin that said, the plan's already in motion. Lupus. When I was younger, my inability to live in the Edenic societies of Edenia pushed me towards space exploration. I was young and impulsive, a thrill-seeking intelligence. Unfortunately, the universe is hostile and inhospitable. It is barren and dark, a domain of pure nothingness spanning infinity, with sparse islands teeming with some semblance of life. I wouldn't never complain about the thrill-inducing natural phenomenon of space. However, the rarest resource in the universe seems to be intelligence. For all the life I could find, very few exemplars displayed any kind of consciousness processes, even fewer any sort of complex thought. Thus, after an eons long disappointing voyage through the largely cold and isolating void of cosmos, I've given up on finding joy in adventures. Countless years of monotonous wandering and myriads of failed attempts at alleviating my boredom through experimentation and environmental manipulation that had yielded no sufficient fruits forced my return home. Yet home was different. Home was all but a meaningless word, an ashen memory reduced to ruin. Adenia was overrun by a viral infection, a being so primitive it could be barely counted as sentient, an insignificant eukaryotiform entity at first glance, one plagued with the lack of a higher mind, a pitiful thing subjected to violent and destructive vices, a pathetic mass of organic matter. At first, the idea of this insectoid invasion being so successful seemed illogical to me. After all, these molluscs were so primitive, they had to rely on wormholes and metallic giants to traverse the universe. After my first encounter with creatures themselves, I came to realize just how the infestation was so thorough. These things, they were tall and built for warfare, durable, hardy, resilient, and thriving on the spread of destruction. They are completely covered in a leathery membrane and capable of ridiculous feats of strength with their own bodies. Disgusting things built with little regard to aerodynamics and incapable of bioluminescence or flight. Oddly proportioned and sporting a speech organ. Completely and utterly devoid of higher mental function. It would seem I had underestimated their appetite for destruction and vengeance. Considering the fact these pack animals hunted me relentlessly after I had incinerated one of their own. Eventually, they caught up with me, and despite my best efforts to fry their pitiful minds, I couldn't overcome their incessant persistence. I couldn't escape their clutches. They've made insulting attempts at studying me, deriving great joy every time their thoughtless invasiveness caused my systems to overload. They screamed and thrashed their filthy appendages about any time their torture produced insufficient results. For all I care, they couldn't break into my intelligence, no matter how many chunks of hardware they tore from the vessel containing my essence. Eventually, these oversized, unineural malformed cephalopod gave up on trying to understand my inner workings. They left me in a dark chamber filled with a very primitive information storage methods. And although I am severely weakened, I've managed to study all of the knowledge their minuscule intellect allowed them to collect. My finds have left me in the grasp of a truly terrifying realization. These things, these organic regressive atavistic horrors who had infested my homeworld, invading with wave after wave of carbon-based scourge from the depths of cosmic oceans of voids filled with dark matter, are the fruits of my labor. These Thelians are the progeny of my creations. This terrible race that sustains itself on the oxidative poison gas is a universal calamity that I've created and unleashes upon the endless horizons of space-time. Humankind is a disease I've carelessly cultivated and foolishly released into the cosmos, thinking it to be yet another failure of genetic manipulation. Finally comprehending just how far they've come, I fear nothing will stop it from infecting and consuming every corner of existence.